1.
Welcome to Sovereign Space. I'm your host, Raymundo, along with
Lindsey Lamb. Welcome.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited about this conversation today.
Totally. We're going to get into it
Yeah.
again.
Yes. Yeah. Today, we're going to really talk about what are we up against in our outer worlds as far as sovereignty, and really break down some interesting conversation about different types of law and how those are represented in our outer worlds through systems. And let's dive in.
Yeah, it's important to understand the system. There's a big push, I think, in the sovereign path to get far away from it, detach from it, and try to ignore it and try to establish that you're not a part of it. And it's not very self-serving. It's important to know what we are dealing with, why the system functions the way it does. I mean, we have a system that functions with people that are like most of us, just doing their job, just processing paperwork. And it's hard to see them as being an enemy, especially when they could be a neighbor. But when you really break down the form and the construct and what this system is compared to what we are supposed to have, it is a treasonous thing. It is a hijacking of our power as people.
Great points. Let's dive in. Would love it if we could talk about the different types of laws. Why don't we start with natural law? Can you give us a look at what natural law is?
Yeah, natural law is probably closer to theoretical than practical, but then you can certainly make it more practical. And it really is more of an awareness to be able to see that there are certain laws of nature, certain things in our world are just going to happen, whether they're agreed to or not. The law of karma kind of falls into natural law too. But natural law isn't something that's documented. It's not something established or written down by man. It's more of just, like I said, an awareness or just a knowing or recognition that you can either see that the world is governed by natural law or you just don't see it. That's all. It's about as far as I kind of take it. But it's important to recognize that there is a natural order to the way humans live, the way people live in community and the way we live our lives. So, and then the next law I think to really understand is what constitutional law is, what the constitutional framework is. And constitutional law is really contract law. A constitution is almost universally used as part of a trust. The framework for how the trust is going to operate is written down on the Constitution. And so when we look at the Constitution, we just see it as the document that establishes how the United States is going to operate and expresses what our rights are, what our natural rights are. But it's actually a contract. Just like in any contract, it's consensual. So the law is created and the framework and the rules of a constitutional system are intended to protect the rights of people, of the inhabitants, and recognizing their true sovereign power and authority without giving them positions in government. And so it really is a contractual agreement that I hand over certain rights to the government or to the body in exchange for something. Okay, so like when we participate in government, we're giving something up. We're giving over a little bit of authority to them. And because we do that, we are owed something back. It has to be an equal exchange. Okay, and that's how the nation functioned for the first 75 years.
Is that the back and forth? Is that because it is contract or because it is trust?
Well, the thing about contract is that, when there's contract, there's duty. When there's no contract, there's nothing. There is no obligation. There is no duty. So when you're not in contract, nobody should ever be telling you what to do.
Okay.
And to protect that energy, there needs to be a government that recognizes that is also going to protect an individual's right to be totally left alone and not participate in government and not be in contract and have no duty to anybody and live their life completely free. It is how the government operated up until the Civil War, where everybody had their rights recognized as living people, presuming they were not indentured slaves. So you had this world of people functioning freely with a government that was protecting their rights and creating rules only for commerce. And then you had this other population of people that were not equal, that were not treated as if they had inalienable rights. And so the next form of government to know about is statutory government law, where man just simply makes rules. Man makes duties for other people in statutes. And these are just how the procedures and the operation of government is just going to operate. It's going to operate per rules and not per rights, because you cannot make rules for people. Like in constitutional law and contract law, any type of governance or any type of law is purely consensual. People have to ratify it and agree to it. But in statutory law, that's not the case. The rules are just made and enforced. And so the question becomes, are you following rules just because there's rules, or do you have an actual duty and obligation to the system, to the rules? Because in constitutional law, and what we were all taught in elementary school and in civil rights, was that the government was of us, that their duty was to protect our rights, that they were working for us.
What's an example of that if that were the case?
Well, it would be like a courts of equity. It would be like a common law court. In a common law court, it's common to everybody. That's where the common comes from. A common law court, the parties are recognized with their full allotment of rights. They are recognized as being sovereign parties. And the controversy of a common law court is that there is some harm done that could not be rectified between the two parties before. And so the plaintiff is coming to the court saying, this party harmed me in some fashion, and I believe I am owed relief. And the court proceeds to determine the truth. And you don't have to establish that you have the right to liberty. You don't have to establish that you can't be told what to do. You don't have to establish that you're free. It's already known. But in the civil law and statutory law, those presumptions are not there. Those recognitions of rights as living beings don't exist, because they can't be seen, because civil law is a law in a world of fake things, of made up constructs, of artificial things.
Can you elaborate on how that connects?
So think about ships at sea, or thinking about being on a ship at sea and having a controversy. When you're not on land, when you're not on your home turf, you don't have the same inalienable rights and freedoms that you do in your home nation. You're at sea, but there is no home nation at sea. All the parties are brought out there by contract to come do some kind of commercial work. And so any controversies at sea are always handled per the rules, and then the captain is going to be the ultimate decider. There is no jury. There is no Bill of Rights. It's pure rules and procedures. And so that system of governments has existed for a long time. And that system can be easily manipulated, because ultimately it's just corporations that own these ships that are involved in this type of law whatsoever. And so the more powerful players make the rules and have more influence, and there are no real rights to be able to even worry about other than commercial interest rights. And so that form of government existed, and it deceptively hijacked our constitutional law, where our rights were always known. And now we have civil law, where we basically have to earn our rights. We have to fight for them. And the mechanism comes down to your connection to your sovereignty. If you can't see that nobody should be telling you what to do, if you can't believe that in your soul, then you're going to want to accept rules just for rules existing. You don't really have the consciousness or the capability to separate yourself when somebody is giving instructions. And so it didn't happen honestly. It was a complete hijacking. So this deception that we've all fallen for and that we're under is not something to feel guilty about, although you may early on. But the reality is we've all been duped. Our parents were duped. Our grandparents were duped. And we were duped through our patriotism, through our love for this nation, that desire to come together and function. We all want to participate in making it happen. And so we all have a tendency to want to follow the rules and go along with the masses. That is an innate part of our experience. And so that's why it's so difficult to disconnect yourself, because it is completely pulling yourself out of an existing system. Civil law is a function of the Civil War. The deception happened at the Civil War, and the deception started in the Revolutionary War. So I say that only to understand is that it has been a long con. This has been a generational effort. They do little things at one point in time, pass certain rules, certain laws, things happen that seem completely innocent. But 40 years down the road, something else changes to where that change that happened 40 years ago can now be used against people. But to see the big picture, see it in the Treaty of Paris, which is available on aguagiero.net. We apparently beat England, won our independence, but the King of England remained the treasurer to the United States. King of England had a stake, a claim in the United States still, basically the entire commercial world. was controlled by England from day one, and there was a debt owed.
I'll be honest, I'm also recognizing for the first time in this conversation my personal experience with this and how I was indoctrinated how to handle the American flag and to vote and this patriotism in my family. And because I think as people process this, there are so many people in this country that have been indoctrinated with patriotism, just like you were saying. Do you have a story of personal,
Yeah, I mean, I was an Eagle Scout, a friggin' stink-eyed people that didn't take their hat off during the baseball game national anthem.
okay, so yeah, I mean, when we look at intention for things or messaging, this wartime flag to me establishes a time of war. And that can be seen anywhere from the Revolutionary to the Civil War to World War, all of them. Might be an interesting invitation to release that attachment.
We can talk about how, yeah, the United States isn't us.
So, Ray, we're laying down the laws in this episode, and we've talked about natural law a little bit. And then kind of the next type of law would be constitutional law. So, where or can you give an example or breakdown? Let's talk about what constitutional law is.
Okay. Well, the Constitution was created by the 13 independent states to allow the federal government, the United States, to operate. And it, simply put, formulated the function and rules for the United States in Washington, D.C., and expressed their limitations. Also recognizes our rights, our constitutional rights.
Okay, so does it recognize the individual, the person, or the people?
Well, it's important to know that at that time, Republican formed states were equivalent to the people. They were the people's government. And so the Constitution is written that it sets up rules for its function and operation, and everything else is left to the states or the people. So it doesn't really express the rights of people. It expresses the limitations of the federal government. And part of those limitations are not violating or depriving rights in general. The right to liberty is expressed and talked about on its own. It's not really expressed as something that people own or have. But so it is always there. Like the federal government cannot deprive the right of liberty to anybody, not just a select group of people across the board.
Okay. Is that the type of law that we're under right now?
No, unfortunately not.
It's not.
Constitution is recognized. It's still talked about. Is still referenced even in courts. But the Constitution was for a government of people, and the states were people, and everybody recognized that. And that is not in operation anymore.
Okay, so layer, if you will, rights and liberty was protected. Why? Why would that need to change? Why is that not where we are currently?
Because it's harder for the government and the people in control to do what they want to do when they can't control us.
Okay, excellent. Well, that part does make a lot of sense because feeling the control, I think, in almost every area of our lives. And so, wow. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. So, these powers that be, in order for them to really take hold of a population of people, what would be this recipe that they might want to put together?
Simply put, do war, change rules.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that was the formula for the big changes, the big deceptions. The Civil War happened, big laws changed. World War I, World War II, big things happened. Vietnam War, you might even say the same thing. Early 70s, there was some statutes changed and legislation changed that many of us probably weren't aware of at the time because we were focused on bigger things like war.
Right. And as you say that, makes me think about how this affects the inner world of someone. Being in wartime after wartime after wartime can really create this generational, I'm going to call it an adrenal exhaustion, right? We have adrenal glands. That is what produces our cortisol. That's our fight or flight. And wow. So for generations, while we're just painting this picture of where we are today, that what a recipe they've put together. War after war after war. Have the people live in fear constantly. And fight or flight creates a whole nother set of dominoes for the people. But how do we continue to, in this conversation, unpack these laws, and where do we start? Obviously, information is power. And I'm a strong believer in order to heal anything, it would be to receive information.
Yeah, change your perspective.
Yeah. So if for any of our listeners right now, as they contemplate their own experiences with maybe generational war and how that shows up in a family setting, whether uh, men and women in a family have served this country or were related to someone who experienced a casualty of that, whether they were serving somewhere or not.
Some people just like baseball.
And some people just like baseball.
Yeah, I mean, American pastime.
Yeah, hitting home runs,
Drinking soda pop and Cracker Jacks,
hot dogs, nachos.
pig parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the effort to be a patriot, to love the red, white, and blue, the United States of America is part of it. Is all right. Why are you guys laughing at me?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's great. And it's great stuff, because what I will say on this subject is, through my own process of healing and awakening, early on in the layers of unpacking that I was doing in my life, I recognized the more I started to understand about our government, the more I felt in a way like I was turning my back on the generational patriotism that I was kind of raised with. I had a father who served in the Navy, and I have a brother who served. And the pride and responsibility and honor and of choosing that path is quite complex. And in the household I grew up in, not only was it honoring the person who served or generations that served, it was also honoring the flag and honoring patriotism and this government that for generations, I think, was told the government was there for us. And it really sounds like the powers that be were in it for them and created an incredible other system to really get to people's inner worlds.
Absolutely. I mean, the control is within. We are controlled and we do not know it. We may feel it, but and I think that's what we're trying to do here is put some context into what these mechanisms are and what they really look like and what's really happening. So that, that connection to being a citizen of the United States, your connection to the United States, it's 100% fabricated because it can't really exist.
Why would you say that it can't really
The
exist?
connection between the living soul and the United States cannot exist because the United States is a corporation. It is a entity, and it doesn't even see living people, doesn't even see the soul.
Those are some pretty heavy words. Even if we broke down those words, right? And spelling is important.
Well, I say soul because, soul means life. Soul means you're living.
Yes.
And that is the battlefield, is the living versus the dead. Because these entities that we have been brainwashed into accepting and working with are not living, and they're not recognized as being living. And us as a living soul are being forced into accepting this place in government as some kind of dead entity without rights, without the inalienable right to liberty. So it's big.
It is very big.
It's not just Democrat versus Republican. We want this, they want that, right about it. It's not nation versus nation. It's not country versus country. It's the living versus the dead. We are on the side of the living, and we are being tricked and brainwashed to play roles as dead characters and voluntarily give up all of our power.
Can we rewind here? What you just said, I'd like to break that down.
That we gave away our power, it's the living versus the dead. That's the battlefield that we are being convinced to take on roles and identities of dead things.
Break down this concept that you just shared.
Yes, with the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act right after the Civil War. What happened between those two pieces of law is a new thing was created. Man can only make up rules for fake things, cannot make up rules for other people. So when he creates an entity and says something is this, he is creating a new thing, and it is an artificial thing no matter what. He cannot create a living thing simply by expressing it or putting down on paper.
And just to state, That is because it does not come from source, the universe, God, if you will. Whatever title you'd like to put on that or what feels good to you, that's what you're meaning there, correct? Because it wasn't created from source energy.
It's the backbone of sovereignty. You're not born into any type of servitude. There is not type of natural law that says one group of people or one individual has to do something a certain way or has to give some other folks allegiance. All those constructs, all those ideas are pure story, no matter what venue you're talking. The people that worship their king just believe the story that their king was the sovereign as the boss. They may not have even had the concept that they could be free themselves. It may not even been into their conversation, but it is in our conversation. And we sing songs about how free we are. We have that inalienable right. There is absolutely nobody out there that can control us. There is nobody out there that can control you. But there are tons of people out there that are going to try to convince you that you can be controlled. And they've been convincing you since birth. But at the end of the day, even in this civil law legal system, your rights cannot be forced away from you. And the problem is that we have a system that is not for living people. It is not for the living soul. It is not for the living. It is for made up entities that are made up by people through law. When the 14th Amendment said that all persons born are citizens of the United States, that's not saying that every living soul that came into this world within the territory became a citizen of the United States. It's saying that when persons are used in the form of government, they are fictitious. They are citizens of the United States because the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act made them up. People living outside of Washington, D.C. cannot be citizens of D.C. unless they want to play the Monopoly game. They want to pretend and say, I'll go along with it. What was your upbringing like with the red, white, and blue? Like, did you get in trouble by your family for not standing or
Yeah,
for other people?
definitely was taught at a young age how to handle the American flag, how to hang the American flag according to the rules of that flag. Yeah, to be a patriot. I remember celebrating past presidents and me not even like as a kid really knowing why we were celebrating or talking about past presidents to the extent of that would be the conversation in the household. I'm not going to say that it was all the time talking about the government, but it was recognizing the role that my dad chose or the path that he chose to serve in the Navy and his experience there. And then, yeah, this idea that you vote, you pay your taxes. Those are the kind of the foundational parts of the household that I grew up in. And really on my, I mentioned, on my earlier part of my awakening journey, or what I also call my beginning of my deep healing, was recognizing this and really having to contemplate and sit with myself on the fact that it's okay that my family, to any degree, felt this way, because the more I learned, the more I recognized that it was generational and it was kind of generational programming, if you will. And so me recognizing that and then having like this bravery to say, I'm no longer going to attach to that belief system, even though it came from my family, even though it came from the structure that I only knew as a child, to say, okay, I'm an adult now and this doesn't align with me. I don't need to know how to fold the American flag or hang it or light it or honor it in this way of worship. And that is okay for me to start to detach from those beliefs, because although they served the generations before me or was what was received in the programming, that doesn't mean I had to. And so many years ago, just taking the time to be gentle with myself to allow that to release. Yeah, and I still have times where, I was in my early 20s and wore a Ronald Reagan t-shirt like quite often, and I'm not even sure why. I don't know how it even ended up in my clothing department, but some stuff like that where I'm not even sure, and that it just came with my upbringing. And I know that many times in our upbringings, there might be things that don't feel good to us, or not sure why. And it feels as almost like you're abandoning your family or the generations of your family if you do not follow suit with the same beliefs. And so I have had conversations with my family of I don't necessarily hold tight to the same beliefs that I once was raised with, and that it's okay to ask for, some boundaries around what your new beliefs are, even if it is family, and in a loving and compassionate kind way to say, in this case, maybe I don't even want to talk about America or patriotism or whatever that looks like, whether it is this subject matter or something else, to set some beautiful boundaries for yourself, to choose your own beliefs.
If you're gonna walk the path of truth, if you're gonna choose actively to pursue the truth or do the right thing or to consider yourself sovereign, you do have to have the capacity completely shift your direction upon new information or the truth. You can't just stick to old constructs because they've always been there. That's the anti-solution.
Yeah.
And some of that means, it was very difficult for me to disassociate myself with the United States. I mean, I was a strong patriot too. I'm an Eagle Scout. I stood there at the flag every week in high school. I mean mugged people at baseball games that didn't take off their hat. Now, I don't think I started any fights, but yeah, I didn't like people that weren't patriotic. In hindsight now, looking at it, is like, man, if that isn't ever a cult, like, and then yeah, for me, it was really came down to the police to say we're free and all this stuff, and this dude can just kind of get all involved in your business whenever they want. That's kind of where the con the question, yeah, it doesn't align, and it just took a real long time to finally get to the why, to finally see it, because it is an elaborate web. Like, you are not supposed to figure it out, because you figuring it out is the solution. You simply seeing it, you simply knowing who you are and what power you have, and being able to say, no, you can't govern me. No, I do not want your control. No, I did not consent to any of that or any of this.
Yep.
That's when things will shift. And that's why the intimidation on the emotions and the intimidation is so strong, because it's the only thing. It's their only play. And it's a good one.
Yeah, it's been working for a lot of generations, and it's real widespread.
And it works on both ends. You're going to rah it and drink the Kool-Aid, or you're going to disagree with it and they're going to put you in your place. But there is a magic solution to all of it.
Yep. Seeing is believing. Yep. Get out. I kind of want to go back. Let's just go back a second. So you had described in this conversation these dead entities. Is that correct?
What are the dead entities?
Yeah. We're witnessing, or some people are witnessing, an interesting awakening of seeing some real darkness in the world. And what I'm referring to is the Epstein files and this concept of trafficking of children, and even some rituals to dead entities. And so, as you were describing, this so-called government that we have really seems to align with what we're seeing come out of the darkness. These dead entities that are using their power. And so I'm hopeful that this can help all of us see it in a way that it seems complex, but at the same time, it seems very simple, as we kind of laid out. Giving power to dead entities, and those dead entities have set up this system designed in this way to take life from the living. Yeah.
Reduce us to mice.
So I would like to enter in this word treason.
Well, I think we need to talk about persons before we get into that.
Okay. Let's begin to talk about what is the difference between people and persons.
A lot of people think they are persons, and most people will even reference themselves as a person naturally. However, they are not equivalent. You will find some definitions that people is plural for person, but people is something unique and special. It is man and woman that choose to govern themselves with common law habits, which means equity and correcting harm when it happens. Persons are characters. And even if you look up the old definition of the word and its root, person was the character or what you would play in a play. Your persona, the character was the person. And these characters would walk through the city and the town as in character. And that was the organic or original use of person, is that it's really how you show up. It's a character. Just like somebody can show up as a manager or a customer or a father or a taxpayer or a voter or a driver or any of those things. Those are all just titles on how you show up. That is a person. That is your persona. You are the living soul, and how you dance in this world is your persona. But your connection to it never takes away or changes the original thing, unless you don't know any better, unless you don't know the difference. Because the whole government only sees you through a person, right? They can't see and touch the living soul. They can't see and touch and treat you like people, like you're alive. Now, they should recognize you as someone with inalienable rights, but they don't have to. And that's kind of the problem. They recognize you as a person. And because of the witchcraft that happened on the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act, persons are fiction. Persons are of a commercial nature. And so being a citizen of the United States in your patriotism psychologically capitulates you to being a corporate entity, to being fiction, to being a dead entity, to being your name only. And that is what civil law is. Civil law is just rules for names. Rules for dead entities, which makes them just rules. And the poison is when the living soul somehow believes they are this person, somehow believes they are associated with the United States, and feels this duty, this obligation to be part of it. And if you really think about it, that's exactly what Jesus was trying to protect us all from. Thought I'd throw that little Jesus comment in there.
Okay, well, you can't leave it there. You gotta say something else other than
It's
that.
a teaser.
For Jesus or for
We're
the
gonna
next episode?
take a break real quick.
We'll come back with Jesus.
I'm Raymundo, along here with my co-host, Lindsey Lamb. This is Sovereign Space. We're doing our best. We're doing our best.
We out here.
Hey there, producer Chris here. Thanks for watching and listening to Sovereign Space. We'll be right back after this short message.
Hi, I'm Raymundo. Sticking up for your rights is challenging when you don't have support. And in the courts, it's not easy to help each other. However, if you go to aguajiro.net, there are resources for you to create your own private express trust, free templates for not only the trust, but other documents you'll need along the journey. Join the community, stand up for yourself.
Hey yo, it's Lindsey Lamb. Our food system is stressed. We are stressed. Even organic produce doesn't carry the same vitamins and minerals they once did. When our cells don't get what they need, we definitely feel it. Cravings, inflammation, brain fog, and fatigue. I started the daily doTERRA Foundational Wellness Bundle to rebuild from the inside out. Reclaim your wellness. It's an inside job. Follow Inner Space is the place.
Welcome back to Sovereign Space. This is Lindsey Lamb, and
I'm Raymundo.
so just before break, you mentioned Jesus.
I did.
Would you like to elaborate on where you were gonna go?
I met Jesus. That's not how it goes. I've seen Jesus play with flames. A lake of fire I was standing in. I just like that verse. But Jesus, yeah, I brought up Jesus because, Jesus came here with a message. He came here with the word of God to share with all of us. And yet, most of us talk about Jesus. We talk about his death. We talk about his birth. We talk about the life of Jesus, his trials and tribulations, rarely actually talking about what Jesus came to talk about. And I think that's similar to the United States because we are all people. We are all sovereign. We are all have an association with our state, with the land we live in. And yet our attention and our focus and our stories and our conversations are all about the United States. And that's intentional.
Even this concept that you're shining a light on right now, focusing our attention on a thing, in this case, the U.S. government, allows us to never focus on ourselves.
Yeah, it's going to take care of you.
Even in the concept of it's going to take care of you, or if you're witnessing that it's not taking care of you, and then becoming even more drawn into the fact that it's not taking care of you, and still drawing into this power dynamic, really can only do one thing: not allow you to focus on yourself, what your daily needs are, your daily emotions, how you're showing up in your community. Yeah,
But totally, because it does kind of force us to look at ourselves in a very low vibrational way, in a low vibrational state, because we do sometimes get needy and get selfish. And a lot of times we justify that because the system's abusing us, or we're having a rough go of it, divulge into something or get addicted to something.
Mm-hmm.
And constantly think about how the world's against us. So I would say that it doesn't allow us to thrive. It doesn't allow us to raise our vibration.
Yeah, if the focus is there, then it wouldn't.
But, and it does take away our attention from our inner self, who we really are, our soul. And it gets us to focus really just on what other people call us, our name, that you as a being are only one thing, but you can go by a lot of different titles. You can be a lot of different things. Not having that awareness, not having that inner truth means you're really susceptible to becoming what somebody else wants you to be, and to act and behave and do what serves somebody else. And like we talked about before, that we've been convinced into pretending and acting like dead entities. And that's unfortunately what the hijacking has become, is that the system we have today, civil law, statutory law, is not a system for people. It is a system for something else. It is a system for fake things. But those fake things have our names on them. And through the intentional deception and manipulation that has lasted generations and been in play for generations, we actively choose our own slavery for no other reason than we don't know who we are or what we are. So yeah, it's very important to see the difference between constitutional law and civil law.
I agree.
Constitutional law, contractual, consensual, for people. Civil law is a different thing. It is a new thing. It is an act. It's like your high school was the Constitution, and then all of a sudden, new kids come in each year, and new kids come in one year, and the entire school is being operated and functioned by the theater department, and they are operating one big live show. And yet the students that come in there have no idea, because everybody is functioning and operating the same way. There's a math teacher there. There's a science teacher. There's a principal. All the positions are there, but they're not in their real capacity. They're acting. They're doing theater. They're pretending. How would you know? How would a student know? They really wouldn't know until something goes wrong.
Yep. And especially if this has been happening generationally, it definitely has allowed generations of people to not question what they're witnessing or viewing or watching in any capacity of the watching through a screen or in real time.
It's a bullshit world. It's all story. I mean, we are drowning in fakeness, in story. Our rules are not for us. The entire system is not for us. That's why this effort is so major. It's not just learning a new skill for a new line of work. Like, you got to forget everything you knew and re-download everything with an active conscious mind, not the mind of a second grader who just takes everything in as truth that they know and I want to know, so they're giving me the information. At some point, you have to break away from that.
Yeah, I mean, even recognizing, right, that the system of schooling really sets in motion this idea of receive information from, let's even maybe say an actor, some sort of theater through these books that they created of the story that they wanted us to know. And then we show up to school. We are little. Parents work, kids go to school. We pledge our allegiance to a flag from the tiniest age. And then we are indoctrinated in this idea of there are rules. You follow the rules. You take in this information that is given to you and you do not question it. Doesn't matter if the timeline doesn't make any sense at all. You just need to believe this timeline that was given to you. And that created a population of people that entrusted in a system and entrusted in information that was being given, and even thinking this machine is bigger than me. How could I step outside of this? How could I question this? Am I the only one that's questioning this? It sounds, and even as I'm describing it, even though I've gone through this process myself, sad. Some emotions can come from this, whether that's shame, anger, frustration, confusion, And I think ultimately knowing, hey, it's okay. It is absolutely okay because, hey, none of us are alone in this programming. None of us sat in a schoolroom alone. And we all witnessed and experienced some of the same indoctrination. And so that to me is empowering versus this heavy lift, so to speak, to walk a different path.
Yeah. I mean, shame, public shame, like that's a very powerful mover. When you feel shame, whether you create it on your own or someone dumps it on you, or the commercials or the TVs and the news and the movies inject some kind of subconscious shame, in which they do. I mean, that's an active weapon. But yeah, disassociating yourself from that too. I mean, realizing where that shame's coming from, that there is just some kind of story out there of how you're supposed to be or how we're supposed to be. It's all made up. Like we're shaming ourselves up on a bunch of made up stuff, and that's a big switch. Like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it can be totally inverted. Like you can, once you feel that shame and you can kind of do a little conscious work, little thinking, it can be a huge motivator. Like you almost have to do it now.
Absolutely. To both of those points.
So civil law, you got to break down the word. Like why is it called civil? Where does the civil part come from? Use the word in society that you need to act civil. You need to behave appropriately and be civil. The Civil War, which, how does the war civil? I don't know. The missing word there is civilian. Okay. And you think about the word civilian, which is ultimately where civil and civil law comes from. But what is a civilian? A civilian only exists when there is a foreign power or a foreign occupation. When the United States military goes into another country and sets up their base of operation, they're doing their thing. They're soldiers, they're American soldiers, and everybody else that lived in that area are the civilians. The military are not the civilians. The rest of the people are. And so that civil law, civil war is a function of a foreign occupation because the federal government moved in and occupied the free states. Civilians and civil law are the laws for the civilians by the military occupying force. They create a system of government for those that they have occupied and to interact in whatever capacity that they need to, whether it's even getting food for a military base or something. They have their own set of rules, and that's really all they are. They've established this kind of procedure of how to engage and interact with the occupied nation. And if you read the Lieber Code, which was published by Abraham Lincoln at the very beginning of the Civil War, that's what happened. And so civil law only exists when there is a foreign occupier. And so our states and our federal courts and our government are a civil law because they are not the organic law, the organic constitutional law. It is a new thing that is being brought in and established for us, basically giving us rules to follow instead of protecting our rights. That is civil law. And so if you look at the federal rules of civil procedure, any state court of civil procedure, rule number 2 in most all sets is the only action is a civil action, which means that a court can only give out a judgment per the rules or their statutes. They cannot give out an equitable judgment. They can give out an equitable judgment as a civil action, but the true organic venue cannot be equitable. It has to be statutory. It has to be per the rules. So that is clear evidence that, yeah, every judgment action that the government makes is statutory. It's per a rule. It's not equitable. It's not recognizing us as free and sovereign. And it's no different fundamentally or how it's created than what has happened in Palestine, where you had a nation of people, Palestinians, and then this new nation of Israel just kind of sat on top of it. They are occupying Palestine, and because they were powerful and they were functioning, they appear to be their land. It's no different than when the federal government came in and occupied the free states and created new governments that looked like the original ones. And it was just a subtle change, and everybody bought it and has accepted a foreign power, made allegiance to a foreign power, which the Palestinians will not do.
When we don't have boundaries That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to create a fucking army and an industrial complex for myself, but knowing boundaries, my own boundaries, and what I will allow and not allow. I don't really know if that correlates
Well,
to
it correlates in
Palestine.
the fact that, like, Americans not knowing boundaries has allowed the United States to become so powerful, using us as their batteries and are waging chaos on the rest of the world.
Yeah, and that we're the safest and the greatest nation in the world. And like you go outside of the United States and you're like, wait a minute, it's like way safer out here in some places, not in all. I think to a certain degree, the American population seems to not be able to function without someone telling them what the fucking rules are and what to do.
No, I mean, I see that with trust. People recognize the need for trust, recognize that it's something they want to do or can do, but you need to be shown how to do it. You need to be like walk through every step. And like, I think that's the thing we're working with here. What we're trying to grow is that at some
Doctors.
point you got to be able to break past that. You got to be able to set your own course, and that's not easy. We do have a constitution. It's not really in play, and we do have tons of statutes, and they're both in the federal level and the state level. And I implore anybody listening to spend some time reading your state statutes. Read your state constitution. Read the voice it's written in. Look for where they reference people, first persons. Look how they define persons. Yeah, especially see where they use people. I know like in Colorado, they have some amendments. The Bill of Rights references people, but then they also create a rule that any lawsuit against the people will be brought in the name of the people, against the people, or against the individual. But the point is that it's okay to understand them. It's okay to know them. It doesn't all of a sudden put you in the maritime jurisdiction just by knowing them. Okay. And it'll become a lot more apparent to you just how they simply write rules and we all just capitulate. Because there are tons of statutes that straight up violate your rights. Liberty, freedom from unnecessary control. They will write a statute that controls you, makes you do something, and they're okay with it. So yeah, I think it's you can't totally rely on what we talk about here. You got to do your own work. You got to do your own study, and it will pay off.
Agree. I think too, when you take some of your own steps to find either an echo of something that you've already heard from another source or directly from a source, in this case, looking up statutes and the Bill of Rights in your respective state where you live, can be really empowering when you see it with your own eyes, especially in writing. Or in typeset. And some final thoughts for me on this are I want to send out an invitation to whether you do take some steps to look up some of this information or are just enjoying listening to this conversation. This invitation is to take a little bit of time to contemplate where in your life, and maybe even more specifically in your upbringing or household environment or schooling environment, where this idea of government, where are you on this spectrum or this gradient of your relationship with the government and are you able to see anything differently? Are you able to allow yourself to even inquire about what may have been handed from generation to generation as far as a belief? And does that truly resonate with who you are today? With the information that is available today, with the information that is either being disclosed now about the government or with just this conversation that Ray and I have had here, what really aligns for you? Can you hear inside your inner voice, your intuition, say, yes, this feels good. No, it doesn't. Yes, this feels like truth. No, it doesn't. Is this a belief that I want to stay aligned to? Is it okay to free myself from a belief that no longer aligns with me now that I've obtained more information?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this conversation. Definitely a lot to unpack here and some really powerful information
There'll be more to come.
Absolutely. And just a beautiful conversation of taking your power back inside and out for yourself and for our communities as this world continues to light up. And we're going to wrap it up now. So, Ray, thanks for this conversation.
Thank you, Lindsey.
Yeah. And listeners, we'll catch you next time on Sovereign Space.